Welcome to the Sports Degos with your hosts Sonny and Murph. We advise you to turn down your speakers and turn up your crap filters because it's gonna get loud and messy. Just win, baby.
If I don't have to do all the crap I did this past Saturday as far as cut back and jump over somebody and stumble, I don't worry about getting caught, period.
On an unbelievable night, there's a high drive, get way back, and it's 20 consecutive victory for the Oakland Athletics.
And laughed when he's conquered and won.
We got some physical players on our team. That's the way you have to play to win, and that's the way we play.
Get fired up, I ain't playing. I'm telling you, get fired up. Stand up, get out of that chair, moron. It's time for the Degos. That's right, Murph and Sonny from the Dego Dungeon. You got it right here, live.
Finally, the Degos come back to the Dego Dungeon. Welcome, all of our 3 listeners. No, maybe 4. I think we're up to 4 listeners now. It's things are moving forward for us over here in the Dego Dungeon. As always, my co-host, well, not always on time, but we'll hear about that later. As always, my co-host in studio, Murph. How are you, sir?
Sonny, I'm doing well. Actually, I've had a very lovely day today. We celebrated Easter at church this evening and went out to dinner with some friends and family and had an absolutely fantastic meal at Carrabba's. I love Carrabba's. They got great pizzas. The Spadino Damari is great. A lot of good stuff out there at Carrabba's. Had a nice little salad. Had about 4 cups of their really strong coffee, and then came home. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Just came home, huh, Murph? We'll get into that story here a little bit. Glad you could join us. You know, we were supposed to start at 8. A little late here. It's 8:46. Usually at this time right now, we're talking Raiders. So we might just jump into Raiders right off the bat. You know, we want to give our listeners what they tune in for. You know what I'm saying, Murph? Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Tons of stuff this week in sports. But Murph, for this little intro banter segment, if you will, I want to talk about BioShock. Now, Murph, I know you're a gamer. I'm a gamer. I don't, jeopardize my family for my gaming, and by no means am I a 300-pound fat man who's stored up in my mom's basement. I got a mortgage and a job and all that stuff, right? But, Murph, I love to escape from reality sometimes and just zone out, playing Madden or playing, a good video game here and there. And BioShock, Murph, I have never played a game twice in a row. I mean, talking about like the campaign. You beat it, go back and beat it again. I actually did that this week with BioShock Infinite. It is by far the best game I have ever played in my life. Oh my gosh. What are your thoughts on it?
It's phenomenal, and I have about, I'm going to guess, an hour and a half left, and we're going to certainly avoid spoilers just to let everybody know. So don't get too worried about listening to us talk about the game. But yes, the original BioShock is one of my all-time favorite video games, if not my all-time favorite. BioShock 2 was really just kind of like an add-on to that game, and it wasn't done by the original designers, Irrational Games. It wasn't done by Ken Levine. But Ken Levine has got his fingerprints all over BioShock Infinite. It is, talk about diverse in storytelling and all the different cool things that the game gets into, the vibe of the game, the graphics of the game. I think this is a banner title for the Xbox 360, which is going to be on its way out here. Well, maybe not on its way out, but the next gen is certainly on the horizon, coming soon. And man, they knocked it out of the park. This game is phenomenal. Start to, I'm going to assume, finish, and fantastic gameplay again, story. Man, just what not to love, right?
Phenomenal game. But Murph, We're not called the Gaming Degos. We're called the Sports Degos. So welcome, everybody listening. Sports Degos. Check us out on the interwebs, thesportsdegos.com. You can listen to us live from that site. Click the link that says Listen Live. It'll take you straight to the link on Spreaker. You can check us out on Spreaker if you have an iPhone or like what's the other option? Android? Yeah, something like that. Or Google?
No.
Windows? What do you got,
phone,
Murph?
dude.
What do you got? Windows?
Yeah, Windows phone. I rock the
Okay,
Windows phone.
okay. Yeah. There's an app called Spreaker. Spreker. Spreaker. Look for the Sports Degos on that site as well. Or you can listen to the archives on the website itself. Murph, many options. To be connected to the Sports Degos. So, normally, Murph, we start at 8 o'clock. Normally. I think every show we've ever done, we've never been more than 5 minutes late. I mean, we've been doing the shows now for a year. We've never been more than 5 or 10 minutes late. And usually it's because of my backwoods internet up here in Oregon. And but today, Murph, was the first time that I have ever been so ready. I mean, like 10 minutes to go, right, to showtime. I'm sitting here. I got my notes printed out. I got my beer cracked. I got a cup of water. I got my 2 screens rocking, Spreakers all ready and loaded, and all of our music. I got all my websites up and ready to go. I was like, what do I do with my time? So I was like, okay, I'll go make the bagaos. And for those of you who don't know what the bagaos are, in our family, the bagaos is referencing number 2. Little did I know, Murph, that me and you were like 2 women hanging out for too long because we were on the same cycle. But apparently, Murph, only mine made the toilet. Go ahead.
You know, today's my 40th birthday, and I rang it in with a very special event. I thought that special event would be Easter. I thought it might be the dinner out with the family. But apparently, when you jam down a salad and 4 cups of coffee at Carrabba's, and then something goes in, something's got to come out. And I'm going to save the gory details for everybody, but, man, I'm telling you, we were driving home. I had to drop off the in-laws at their car. And I was on the way home, I got a couple little gurgle warning signs, and I thought, okay, well, I'll be all right.
Were you touching cotton at that point, Murph?
Not even close.
Was the turtle poking its head out the shell? No?
It was just brewing, man. It was just brewing.
Okay.
And so I drop off the in-laws at the car, and I'm fine. I'm golden, hugs and kisses. Everybody says goodbye. Kids, wife pile into the car. There's a little beer store around There's a little beer store around the corner from where we were. So we hop around the corner, and go out to get our beer for the night, for our beer wars.
Okay.
I go in, man, I'm standing in line. Of course, it's always the slowest person in line ahead of you when you got to go, right? So I'm really kind of feeling it now. I feel like I'm getting I'm not touching cotton yet, but I'm gurgling. I'm gurgling hard. And so I buy the beer. I go out. I put it in the car. And then all of a sudden, whammo, dude. I had to go, and it was now time. So I go flying back into the beer store, and I go, hey, brother, you got a place can I use your restroom? And he goes, sorry, man, we don't have one. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have one? He goes, I'm sorry, we don't have one. I go, where do you go? And he goes, I go to Subway, which is right next door. I'm like, Subway's closed. He goes, I'm sorry, man, I don't have anywhere. Which he's probably lying to me because you don't want to let beer store customers use the bathroom. But what was I going to do, stand there and argue with the guy? So I run back into the car. I'm sweating like crazy. I get him. I throw the thing and drive, and boom, and we're off. And it's kind of rainy. I'm trying not to get into an accident, but I'm driving us home as quick as I possibly can without being too crazy, about being dangerous. But again, I get stuck behind one of the slowest cars on the way home. We pull into the neighborhood. I pull off my seatbelt. I go, honey. I go, man. I'm just gonna leave the car in the driveway and go. I'm stopping and going. So I fly into the driveway, throw the thing in park. I go booking into the house, flying through the garage. Open the door, man. I'm close, and it's like your hindquarters has a tendency to recognize when it's in a certain.
Oh, it knows. It has radar.
It's got radar. It knows it's coming. And
I call it Boldar. It knows when a bull is close.
Yeah, well, my Boldar was peaking, man. It was DEFCON 5, brother. This was it. So I go, try to get the door open, and I'm fighting with get the door open, and I squeeze in the bathroom. I'm trying to get my pants off, and I barely get my pants off, and I reach down to lift the lid up, and I couldn't get the lid up, and that's when everything started. And so in between the lid coming up and me going down, and I accidentally lifted both lids, so I was sitting in the very bottom thing, like a little kid, like with the both lids. Dude, it was a crime scene in there, man. It was brutal. It was brutal. It was all over everything. And so, I hear the families coming in, and they're walking by the bathroom, and I'm turning on the faucets and flushing the toilet 100 times and spraying the spray because, there's one thing when you go to the bathroom and it's got a smell to it when it's in the bowl, but when there's crap outside the bowl, it takes on a whole nother level of stink. And so it was bad. It was really, really bad. I was really embarrassed. But, it's radio show fodder, I guess. So that's why I'm late. I had it timed out perfect, too. I was going to be ready to go at like 9:59.
I don't even know what to say, Murph. That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
I had to put my pants and my underwear in the washer.
Now, did you say you were turning 40 or 4? Because normally, you don't crap yourself past like what, 5? 6?
Now being a member of our family that is truly our family curse. Sometimes we got to go. Heck, you guys have heard Uncle Mark on this show. Uncle Mark he's
crapped himself more than any 4-year-old I know.
I promise you that if you look in his closet right now, he's got pants without pockets because he's cut them out to use them for wipe. His socks don't have tops. Shoot, he's got shirts without sleeves.
Now, Murph, I'd be lying if I didn't come clean here, no pun intended. Murph, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor by trade, right? It's what I do, and one of the things we do every time we do a group, I work with the kids, is we say, what's your clean date? Clean date means the last time you used. So, when's the last time you used meth, or when's the last time you used heroin, Murph, I got 365 days clean, and I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about the last time I crapped myself. It was last Easter, Murph.
Was it really?
It was an Easter dinner. I was at church. They had sausage and bacon and scrambled eggs and just all sorts of goodness. So I'm shoving it down my throat. I probably had 42 sausages and 16 pieces of bacon and stuff, I mean, I'm good to go, right? I'm stuffed. I proceed to go to the bathroom and it's locked. And it's downstairs. And so I says, okay, I'll wait a second. So I'm waiting. Thing doesn't come up and stuff, the door's not opening, right? And I'm like, hey man, I gotta go to the bathroom and stuff, that point of no return, right? Where you're like, you're 30 seconds away from dropping it, and it don't matter if your pants are on or off. It's gonna be dropped, right? The 30-second mark approaches, right? And I'm like, oh, dang, dude. And I know there's bathrooms upstairs, but I'm like, man, if I go upstairs, I lose my spot in line here. And what if I go upstairs and I can't find a bathroom and then I'm around more people, right? At least I'm downstairs and nobody's around, right? So I'm sitting there, and so I'm starting to clench. Murph, you know what I'm saying? I'm starting to clench.
I definitely know the clinch. It's sometimes you even go to manual shutoff.
It's the male version of Kegel exercises, if you will. It's the male version of Kegel exercises. So I'm Kegeling, right? I'm Kegeling like crazy, right? I'm trying to squitch it and stuff, and next thing you know, I knock on the door. I'm like, hey, what's going on in there? And the guy's like, I'm finishing up. He starts washing his hands, and just like Boldar, something happened where it was like, oh, he's washing up. I'm close, right? All of a sudden, a couple of those stomach burps happen and stuff, like it's exploding with lava inside there. It's coming, right? But he takes like 2 minutes to wash his hands. Who washes their hands for 2 minutes? Next thing you know, Murph, despite my efforts to Kegel and despite my efforts to wipe my forehead, it starts to ooze out.
Ah, jeez.
In my underwear, in church. And I haven't even gone to church yet. So... Murph, I got 365 days clean from the last time I sat in church with no underwear. Welcome to the Sports Degos.
365 days more than me. So I'm going to look forward to tomorrow when I can start day one.
You got 1 day clean. Literally 1 day clean.
Literally 1 day clean.
All right, Murph, let's transition on to some more
Let's talk about sports instead of poo.
How about beer? Let's go from poop to beer to sports. What are you drinking tonight, Murph?
Sonny, I'm drinking I'm going to say the title of the beer on the front end so I don't get berated like you berated me last week. Although I read the description of the beer and the title was in the description, I'm going to give it to you on the front end. Lazy Magnolia, Mississippi's Brewery. I'm drinking Lazy Magnolia's Southern Pecan, the original pecan nut brown ale. Southern Pecan, the original pecan nut brown ale, is the first beer in the world made with the whole roasted pecans, using a careful balance of the finest malts, aromatic hops, and roasted pecans. Southern Pecan is delightfully smooth and warm, with a nutty sweetness that accentuates a delightful depth of flavor. Here along the banks of the Jordan River, in a region known for having the best water for bootleg whiskey, we found that water also provides a perfect balance of softness and alkalinity to bring out the rich flavor and smoothness of its dark malts. Southern Pecan was a Bronze Award winner at the specialty beer category of the 2006 World Beer Cup, but we do not brew our beers for awards. We brew our beers for you. LazyMagnolia.com. I got to say, pretty good. It's not as good as the Laughing Skull I had last week. I don't think it's as good as some of the other nut brown ales I've had. Mainly like a Blackstone I really like. That's a good nut brown ale. But it's pretty good. It's to use your favorite word, it's drinkable.
Murph, that sounds like another fruity beer. What's
fruity.
It called again? Magnolia?
Lazy Magnolia, and it's called
How
Southern...
the heck? What? Magnolia?
That's the name of the brewery. It's Southern Pecan is the name of the beer.
Oh, that makes it even worse. Magnolia, Southern Pecan. Where's the brewery at? In Frisco? Come on, Murph. You're killing me over here.
What are you drinking?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This beer, Murph, was established in 1864. Murph, I was thinking of you when I bought this beer. Brewed in the Irish tradition. Now, Murph, we all remember the first time we had a beer in our youths days, right? You know, I remember my dad giving me a Coors when I was like 4, 5, probably. Had a drink of it, you know. I think I had my first full beer when I was like 9 or something like that. Who knows? But Murph, I remember the first time I went to a kegger. Remember your first kegger? This was like changing your oil in a car, right? Or changing your starter. It was like a moment of manhood, right? It was just like a keg. It was like this infinite amount of beer. And it was more than you've ever seen in your life, right? Usually you're drinking Sixers or, you know, a couple beers in your pockets and stuff, you know, on your way to somebody's house. But this was a keg, Murph. And I was 16 years old. And I said, wow, this is amazing. And the beer, Murph, it wasn't the greatest, but it had this taste, this aftertaste that was pretty good. So I proceeded to drink many of them and proceeded to puke and proceeded to have a great night, you know, like I could do as a teenager. But Murph, I went back to that beer, having drank it in a couple years. Manufacturer license from Brasser East Pelforth, something like that, Murph. George Killian's Irish Red. Murph.
Oh.
It's one of my faves.
That's a good call. That's a nice little throwback there. I haven't had Killies in a long time. That is good stuff.
You know, it's not a beer that's highly sought after, but it's usually in every store and stuff. And man, I haven't drank it in a while, so I thought, you know, I'm gonna go after some Killians.
You know what? Considering your old school callback to George Killian's Irish Red and my kind of little bit of a misfire on the Lazy Magnolia Southern Pecan, I'm going to go ahead and concede this Beer Wars, sir, even without the votes. Congratulations. You won this week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I have so many people to thank here. First of all, George and all his Killians is who I want to thank. Yes, thank you. All right, Murph, we got a big show tonight. We're talking baseball salaries, Donovan McNabb, Flynn, Palmer, Belichick, and the Honey Badger, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's photo for the Sports Degos whopping historical fact of the week.
Don't give it all away.
Anthony Spice Adams and Danny Ainge? What?
Love Spice Adams.
Big show, Murph. Big show. We are going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dissect the baseball salaries of 2013, and we'll also hear from Donovan McNabb on what he thought about Tony Romo's contract. You're listening to the Sports Degos.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
How many times has this happened to you? You have a bass and you're trying to find an exciting new way to prepare it for the dinner table. You can scale the bass, remove the bass, tail, head, and bones, and serve the fish as you would any other fish dinner. But why bother now that you can use Ronco's amazing new kitchen tool, the Super Bass-O-Matic 13? Yes, fish eaters, the days of troublesome scaling, cutting, gutting are over because Super Bass-O-Matic 13 is the tool that lets you use the bass with no fish, no waste, and without scaling, cutting, or gutting. Here's how it works. Catch a bass, remove the hook, and drop the bass. That's right, the whole bass into the Super Bass-O-Matic 13. Now, just adjust the control dial so that the bass is blended just the way you like it. Yes, it's that simple.
Wow, that's terrific bass.
We've got bass here. Fast, easy, ready to port. Super Bass-O-Matic 13 comes with 10 interchangeable rotors, a 9-month guarantee, and a booklet. 1,001 ways to harness your bass. Super Bass-O-Matic 13 works great on sunfish, perch, sole, and other small aquatic creatures. That's Super Bass-O-Matic 13. It's clean, simple, and after 5 or 10 fish, it gets to be quite a rush. Super Bass-O-Matic 13. You're never going to have to scale, cut, or gut again. Just send $49.95 to the Sports Degos, care of the Dego Dungeon, Oakland, California.
Welcome back to the Sports Degos with Sonny and the Murph. All right, welcome back to the Sports Degos. I am your host, Sonny, along with my co-host, Murph. Check us out at thesportsdegos.com. Look for us on Spreaker.com/ I think it's called West 360. You can look for us at the Sports Degos on Spreaker for the podcast. We're going to talk baseball salaries real quick. Every time around this year, spring training hops up. Whenever I'm out there mowing my lawn, I just kind of smell the grass clippings and just think of playing ball as a kid. Baseball, just this time of year, it's just so entrenched, I think, in a sports fan's mind that you just start poking and prodding and just start looking around and seeing what's happening on the landscape. There's an article by Deadspin recently that kind of showcased a little bit what the teams are making. You know, in 2013, payrolls and salaries for every major league team. And we want to kind of just glance at that real quick. You know, here at the Sports Degos, we're big Oakland A's fans. You know, we grew up in the Bay Area. Reggie Jackson, Mark McGuire, to Canseco, to Corny Lansford, and Walt Weiss, and Mike Gallego and stuff. You know, all those old school guys, Dave Henderson and Eckersley and Ricky Henderson. And we love our A's. And typically the A's are at the bottom of the payroll scale. Because much like the Raiders, who wants to play baseball in Oakland, you know, and take away from outside of Moneyball and stuff? You know, what recognition have the A's gotten recently in recent years? Now, they've been putting together some pretty good ball clubs, and last year had an amazing run, very reminiscent to that Moneyball run back in the day. So, looking at salaries, no surprise, Yankees, the top of the list, $228 million. Followed closely by the Dodgers, Murph, $216 million. Now, here's the funny thing. The next closest ball club is the Phillies. Guess how much they're at?
Well, I'd be lying if I say I wasn't looking at it, but I'm totally shocked by the disparity between the two, between the next lowest to the Dodgers, and it's the Philadelphia Phillies, $159 million.
Murph, that's $56 million below the Dodgers, and then $68 million below the Yankees. Now, here's the funny thing. The disparity between the Dodgers and the Phillies at 58, did I say 58? 56 million?
56, yeah.
Is more than the Miami, what are they, the Marlins? More than the Miami's paying, and also more than the Astros are paying. Check this out. A-Rod is set to make more than the entire salary of the Houston Astros. You got to be kidding me. The Astros payroll is $24 million. That is unbelievable. Is that accurate? Is that really real?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's clearly rebuilding, and it's funny because when you think back, you know what, I guess we're going back a little ways now, 10 years ago when they had the killer bees, when it was Biggio and Bagwell, and Clements was pitching back for him again, and this was a franchise that was I'm not going to call them dominant, but they had a pretty good level of success running there.
They had a good squad.
Back, of course, this was before the whole Enron debacle and all that, and I was actually fortunate enough. I spent some time in Houston back then, and I saw a game at Enron, and it was a phenomenal place to watch a baseball game. I watched them play the Kansas City Royals, which back then that was when Jermaine Dye and Johnny Damon were in that outfield. But anyways, yeah, that's correct. But this is the inherent problem with baseball, and this is where the NFL and its parity has propelled it into being the sport, in our country. Is that this is a game of haves and have-nots when you look at Major League Baseball, and it takes a genius like Billy Beane to use, the Moneyball theories to apply to a baseball team in order to achieve success without having a monstrous payroll. When we look at our Oakland A's, they're more than double of what the Houston Astros are, but still they're $68 million, about $68.5 million, which puts them still in the bottom 5 of the league. And this is a team that's going to contend for a division title this year. Now, granted, once those players' contracts mature, they're probably not going to get them back, and that's the downside of being an A's fan. Is that the downside of Moneyball is that guys like Nick Swisher go, guys like Jason Giambi go, guys like Hudson Mulder Zito, they go. You get you get these guys that we get attached to as fans. They end up leaving because you can't re-sign them for what their worth is. I keep wanting to call him J.J. Redick. Josh Reddick is going to be gone once his contract matures. And once Cespedes, man, that guy is such a bomber. But look at what power hitters in Major League Baseball nowadays are making. Look at what Prince Fielder and these guys are making. Cespedes is going to get a monster contract from somebody like New York, someone like Boston, someone like the Dodgers. It's coming. So, anyways, that's the downside of it. But Major League Baseball needs to look at, I think, a much more harder salary cap. Right now they have the luxury tax, which is fine. It controls spending a little bit. But when you're in a major market like New York, it doesn't matter. When you're in L.A., the luxury tax doesn't matter because you got the revenue coming in to be able to pay that too. So,
it's funny. A-Rod, you think of his struggles in the postseason, and yet this year he's going to make $29 million. Vernon Wells is at $24 million. CC Sabathia, $24 million. Marks Texeira, $23 million. And Jeter is at $16 million. I mean, really? Jeter? Not even the top paid Yankee? Pretty phenomenal looking at that. Kind of unbelievable, really. And then you think back to last year. I think last year the A's were the least of the payrolls, right? They were like, 53, 55, somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was pretty low, yeah.
And how well they did. And that just speaks to the ownership. And it's almost like what we're seeing in Oakland right now with the Raiders and stuff. So baseball salaries should be interesting. It'd be neat to come back to that list and look at the end of the year how each team did compared to where they at on that list.
Is this on? Hey! Is this on? Hey, shut your fat mouth! I'm talking here!
Go ahead, Murph.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, it's funny when you talk about coming back and looking at this list. What's funny when you look at it, Derek Jeter's coming off an injury, and who knows what kind of production the Yankees are going to get out of him this year. Also, Alex Rodriguez. So you look at those guys collectively, that's $46, almost $47 million you got tied up into 2 old guys that are injured. Crazy.
Yep. More than what Marlins and the Astros entire salaries, right? Yeah. All right, Murph. We're going to transition into Shut Your Fat Mouth, okay?
I think that would be lovely. Let's do that.
Is this on? Hey! Is this on? Hey, shut your fat mouth. I'm talking here.
All right, Murph. Who needs to shut their fat mouth this week?
Shut your fat mouth, Donovan McNabb. This guy, he kills me. Let's rewind the clock back a little bit. Let's go back to the early to mid 2000s. Let's go back to when Donovan McNabb was a pretty successful player in the NFL. He got a lot of grief from the Philly fans, but he was he got that team into being a perennial playoff contender. They went to 3 straight NFC championship games. went to a Super
was
Bowl.
four.
I
I want to say it
was
was
four. Okay, yeah. I mean, this guy was a pretty good player. I think he was, in his playing day, he was kind of underrated. And like I said, he got a bad rap in Philly. I mean, we certainly would have loved to have had him in silver and black for those years. But all that said, if you remember back to when Donovan McNabb was active, he didn't really say a lot. He really kept his mouth shut as far as things that were going on in the locker room. He, whether it was guys like Freddie Mitchell or whether it was, of course, T.O., whenever anything was controversial or questionable or what, Donovan McNabb never said anything. He always kept it close to the vest and was never a provider of good sound bites. Well, now all of a sudden, he's on the NFL Network.
Except when it came to Campbell's Chunky Soup. He was always
Then he was all a chatterbox then. But now that he's on the NFL Network, now it's kind of the opposite. Now Mr. McNabb is freewheeling with his opinions, and I think he got himself into a little bit of a pickle here with this latest comment that he had. And I'm talking about his judgment of Tony Romo's new contract. Now, while I think we can all agree that Tony Romo isn't, quote, an elite quarterback, he's not the guy, obviously, that's rattled off a bunch of postseason victories. He's only got one to this point. And really, he and not just himself, but the Dallas Cowboys of recent history have underperformed when it comes to late in the season and when it comes to the postseason. So, but all that said, he got a new contract this week. Romo got an extension for 6 years and $55 million. And while on the surface, that may seem a little exaggerated, it's not totally out of line with the caliber of quarterback he is compared to his peers in the National Football League.
Murph. It's actually $108 million, but 55 of it's guaranteed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. My bad. Yeah, 55 of it's guaranteed. All right. And I think Donovan actually said that in one of his tweets. So it's a total of $108 million, but the 55 you're right is guaranteed. So
correct.
Okay. So here's where I think Donovan McNabb gets shut your fat mouth from this half Italian today. Donovan McNabb, shut your fat mouth, because as last week we talked about, there's a certain handful of things that you don't talk about when it comes to another man. In reference to last week, it was Teddy Johnson commenting on the looks of another man's wife. Here's another one. You don't talk about another man's money. We are in a capitalist society, and these guys, whatever you can earn it. If you're earning it legally and morally correct, knock yourself out, man. I don't think anybody should ever begrudge anybody for the amount of money they make. Now, you can be critical of how much they, share with others or contribute to charities, or you could comment on things like that. But as far as what someone's total earnings are, it's none of your freaking business. Leave them alone. And especially in the NFL, when all this stuff is public knowledge, it's, I think it's a little out of line to comment on what someone makes. And then to top it off even more than that, this guy's a former quarterback in the freaking NFL that made millions and millions of dollars. Like how can you criticize one of your peers that way for what he went out and has earned, whether you think it's just or not, to throw Romo under the bus for getting granted a contract like this from Jerry Jones, I think is completely hypocritical. And not only to the fact that he made all this money in the NFL over all those years, but the fact that he never said anything. He wouldn't say SHIT if he was standing in a pile of it. And now all of a sudden he's Mr. Opinionated because now he's on TV. So, Donovan McNabb, shut your fat mouth.
Murph, how many playoff wins does Tony Romo have?
1.
You know who that playoff win was against?
Was it against the Eagles?
It was against the Eagles, Murph.
Awesome. That's
Gotta love that, right? You think McNabb's a little salty over the way his career ended? Or do you think he's a little salty over those 4 straight NFC championships they went to? Think he's a little salty about having to go to the Minnesota Vikings? Oh, gosh. McNabb was one of those guys who just kind of had a great career, elite quarterback for a while, and then just didn't know when to hang it up. And, he's bitter. How can you read that any other way, right? He's going to sit there and try to mock Romo and stuff. I love that picture. We just posted the link on profootballtalk.nbcsports.com of Romo kind of stopping and talking to McNabb, and McNabb's just kind of looking at him like, who are you talking to me, right, and stuff. It's like, man, shut up, dude. You ain't been relevant for 10 years, you know. Shut your fat mouth. All right, Murph, we're going to listen to a beautiful song real quick for about 1 minute and 57 seconds. That's the time it takes me to go to the bathroom and come back and do number 1. After that, Murph, we're going to talk Raiders Repertoire with our special guest. I believe his name is Ross from Twitter. That's basically what we know of him. But we'll be talking Raiders. And Murph, I want to go over their draft picks. There's an article, ESPN.com, Oakland Raiders draft options. Want to check that out, written by Bill Williamson. And I listen to the Sports Degos. When we come back, we're going to talk about the All right, welcome back to the Sports Degos. TheSportsDegos.com, on Twitter at TheSportsDegos. Check us out on Spreaker, all of our archives. You can also listen live to the show on Spreaker.com. Search for the Sports Degos. And if you have an iPhone, Android, Google, Windows, now there's a Facebook phone, I think. You can check us out there too. Download the Spreaker app and look for the Sports Degos. Murph, is there a better song in the history of songs than what we just listened to?
You know, there's Stairway to Heaven.
That's a good one.
There's Inagata Davida.
Dust in the Wind.
Dust in the Wind. There's, there's a multitude of classic hits, but nothing rings truer than The Autumn Wind, sir.
I like heavy music, Murph. You know, I grew up listening to Metallica and Master of Puppets and Injustice for All and, Megadeth and, up until Low. And then it was like Rage Against the Machine and Nirvana and Pearl Jam, the grunge years and stuff, and then it was, Fear Factory and I've always kind of liked the heavier bands, but there's something about Autumn Wind that perfect. The notes are just makes you all warm. Murph.
Especially with John Facenda's intro, man. It's just so classic. And God bless Steve Sable. God rest his soul, man. We lost him too early. But, man, he wrote the perfect Raider poem there.
Murph, there's been a lot of talk this week in regards to the Raiders. A lot of talk every week regarding the Raiders. One of the things I'm excited about, Murph, is there's so much talk coming out of Oakland. Oh, man. Earlier on Twitter, somebody said something about, hey, haven't heard anything out of Alameda lately. And it was like, yeah, like almost seems like daily you're hearing something going on with the Raiders. And then when you don't for a couple days, you're like, hey, what's happening here, right? What's going on? How come we're not hearing anything? And the latest, Murph, man, I don't even want to beat the dead horse. I don't even want to talk about it. The quarterback situation. They're looking at bringing in Flynn. Is the newest rumors. What are your initial thoughts on that?
I think it's a stopgap. I think that, if we've learned anything in the spring wind now with Reggie McKenzie is that he is going to play money ball. I mean, he's forced to when you have as much dead money as the Raiders have. He's forced to get the biggest bang he possibly can for his buck. And anywhere he's got a chance to get a discount and to save at a position, he's going to. And right now, Carson Palmer, his contract is way more than his value is on the field. And so I think that Reggie is looking to move out of that contract one way or another, whether it's Carson restructuring or whether it's moving him out of town and picking up somebody for lesser dollars. And I think that Flynn provides a good option for Reggie. It's familiar ground for him that he was part of the process when Flynn was brought into Green Bay. So he's a familiar player to him and he knows what to expect. And I think that Flynn, when given the chance, has shown that he can play. He's at, what do you throw, 6 touchdown passes in that one game, for Green Bay. So, I mean, he showed that he can do it. Seattle made a play for him this last offseason with the idea of bringing him in as being the starting quarterback of their football team before they uncovered gold in Russell Wilson, so who clearly is going to be a superstar in this league. So outside of that happening, Matt Flynn's the starter in Seattle, so he's certainly capable of starting in the NFL. Now, is he a franchise guy that's going to lead our team for the next 15 years and march us to a Super Bowl? He's probably not that guy, but he is good enough to keep us competitive, and he is, when you look at quarterback money, what is he, $5-6 million a year? That's relatively cheap when you look at quarterbacks in today's NFL. So I think that it'll be a good fit, and then they're not going to draft them. And if they do draft a quarterback in this year's draft, it's going to be later rounds. We've talked Tyler Bray before. There's Nassib out of Syracuse. There's a handful of guys that aren't named Geno Smith that aren't going to get taken in the first round. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for the Raiders to pick someone in a lower round and then develop them over a couple of years with the idea of them then coming in as the starter over Matt Flynn. And then in the meantime, it also gives you a chance to develop Terrell Pryor and see what you have there to see if he is a viable starter in the NFL or if maybe he needs to just be take a more of a gimmicky role in the offense or even play another position as a whole. So I think it's a good fit. I think it's no surprise. It's right in line with what Reggie's been doing all along. And I think it's inevitable, just like we knew Tommy Kelly was going to be gone. Carson's gone too. It's all just a matter of timing at this point.
You mentioned Terrell Pryor, TP6, playing other positions, and that instantly made me think of Cordell Stewart on the Steelers. I always wondered what was up with his neck. And side point, right? Did you ever see his neck? It was like he just had this. I don't know what it was. Just a bunch of stuff on his neck. It was weird. Anyway, I'm serious. Google a picture. You could probably type in the internet Cordell Stewart's neck and find a weird picture.
I heard he used to dress up like a girl, too, and prance around the streets of Pittsburgh.
Cordell Stewart's neck.
I'm just saying.
I'm typing it in right now. I'm going to post it on Twitter. Anyway, Murph, do you think Terrell Pryor could ever go that route to be kind of just that, I don't know what you want to call it, a next position or an act, just an athlete, just plays random positions or.
Yeah, I definitely think he could, and I definitely think he will if that's what's called upon. I mean, he said before he just wants to play, and if it's going to be his role to be the quarterback, he wants to be the quarterback, obviously first and foremost, but he just wants to be on the field. So if there's another position for him that he can play to get that time, I mean, yeah, he's willing to do it. And you know what? And kudos to him. Mad props to him for being willing to do that. There's been players over the years that have come out of college and have said, I'm a quarterback and I only want to be a quarterback. Tebow's kind of done that a little bit. And there's been a whole multitude of guys over the years that have done that. And why do that? Why limit yourself? Especially if you're an athlete and you come in and you have NFL teams that are willing to give you a chance to be a starting wide receiver. Why would you not take advantage of that? You look at a guy like Antoine Randall L. is a good example of that. Hines Ward is a good example of that. There's lots of guys that were quarterbacks in college that come into the NFL and they just say, look, you're, for whatever reason, you don't have the ability to play quarterback in the league, but we think you could excel at these other positions. When you look at the body type of Terrell Pryor, there is no doubt that he could be, a big wide receiver or even a tight end. He posted up a picture on Twitter earlier this week. It was after a workout with him and Rod Streeter. When you look, they're built the same. They're built almost identically the same. So when it comes to the speed and the skill set and all that, Pryor has it. Now, I don't know what kind of hands he has. I'm going to assume they're pretty good, he's so talented in all the other ways of playing football. So I'm going to assume he's got decent hands. So yeah, why would you not want to do that, to get in the game? So, I think that another thing too is that if and he is truly willing to do this, then it's on the Raiders coaching staff, because you got to find a way to get him in the game. You got to find a way to get him active. You got to find a way to cater your offense and not be so rigid in your system, and be willing to open it up a little bit to take advantage of your talent, like what Bill Belichick does, and not like what stupid Greg Knapp did last year, where he wouldn't take advantage of what he had on the roster and catered his offense around that. Instead, he tried to stay to the system and had guys. Well, we all know how that turned out. I won't rehash it, but if our coaching staff takes the approach of Belichick, or even Ron Rivera, look at the way he used Cam Newton from day one. He never once tried to turn Cam Newton into a pocket passer like Andy Reid did to Michael Vick. Why do you do that? Why try to turn them into something that they're not? Let them take advantage of what their game is. So anyways, I think that, yes, Terrell Pryor will be willing to, and it's up to the Raiders to then figure out a way to use him. But unfortunately, I don't think that he's quite got it as far as being our starting quarterback. Otherwise, he'd be it by now.
Yeah, that's the thing that I keep looking at. You can read a lot into what people say, but you can also read a lot into what people don't say. Much like you can read a lot into people by their actions, and you can also read a lot into people by what they're not doing. And what I see the Raiders not doing is having a lot of faith in Pryor. One guy earlier this week on Twitter. It's funny how much you just
learn it.
You hang out on Twitter and stuff. I mean, it's where it all happens, right? He said, man, Pryor's the guy. Didn't you see that game against the Chargers? One game, right? And then somebody says, yeah, obviously you're going to put down Flynn and say he sucks because he's had a lot more time, and that and the guy even said he's unproven, that Flynn's unproven. But yet he wants to go with Pryor. When you compare the two, Flynn's played in a whole lot more NFL games than Pryor has. And I think the obsession with Pryor is partially like we're so obsessed with just changing what's been going on in Oakland for the last 10 years. I mean, this is the worst stretch in the Oakland Raiders history. Up until, I believe, the 90s, they were one of the winningest organizations in pro football. Madden still has, John Madden still has the highest winning percentage of coaches with more than 100 wins. And so it's like the Raiders were always good, but for the last 10 years, they have not only sucked, they have been the laughing stock of not only the NFL, but of all sports. So they went from being one of the most winningest teams in all of professional sports to the laughing stock of professional sports. When I sport my Raider gear up here, which is about 6 to 7 days a week, constant, you're a Raiders fan? What? Raiders? Really? I'm just like, man, I don't even know. And so it's like the fans are so desperate for something. We'll believe in anything at this point. Hey, we're bringing in Javon Walker. All right. Hey, we're getting Terrell Pryor. Oh, okay. It's like, hey, we got Hayward Bay because he's fast. Well, we should have maybe went Crabtree, but okay, we love Hayward Bay. It's like we'll grasp at any straw for success, when at the end of the day, all we want to do is win. And so Pryor, Palmer, Flynn, Fitzpatrick, I don't care who we bring in. I just want to win. I just want a winning team. I don't care if it's the freaking water boy, Adam Sandler, right? Just bring in somebody who can get us some dang wins, dude. The fan base deserves it. It's ridiculous.
And you mentioned, the fans latching onto the newness, and I agree with that 100%. But the other facet of this, though, too, is that Terrell Pryor represents something else, and that is the new direction of the NFL. That, when we watched the success of Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck to a certain extent. He's a little bit more of a passer, but Russell Wilson, RG3, when we look at what Cam Newton has done since he's been in the league, we look at what Michael Vick has done for a long period of time. When we look at these guys, when we look at these mobile quarterbacks, Kaepernick, these mobile quarterbacks with big arms that are able to still get the ball downfield. In the old days, the knock on the mobile quarterbacks was that they weren't good passers. Well, now these guys are phenomenal passers. They've introduced college-style offenses and the read option and the triple option, all that stuff. And so by introducing that, that's what we're looking at, the guys that are rooting for Pryor, and I'm one of them. That's the next evolution of the NFL. I want to see Terrell Pryor run the read option with Darren McFadden, period. I don't care who our quarterback is. At some point in the 2013 season, I want to see that play. And I think that I'm not alone, that there's a lot of us fans that want to see Terrell Pryor and Darren McFadden do that because they are phenomenal athletes, and these are two guys that can just ball out, and that's where the league is going. Now, our defense is going to catch up? Probably. So will all those, I call them gimmicky, they're becoming less gimmicky, but those option-style offenses, are those going to have less success than they did in 2012? Because that the defenses are going to catch up, the coordinators are going to catch up. Yeah, I think so too. But I think that as well. But we got to see it though. It's like, is this the next incarnation of the Wildcat? Is this something that's going to be around for a couple of years and then go away? I don't know. This one seems to have a little more stickiness to it. It seems like this is a little more viable long term based on what kind of personnel you have. So all that said, I think that Terrell Pryor is going to get his chance. He certainly should get a chance in that type of an offense. But here's the last thing. I'm going to piggyback on something else you said about Pryor. The Raiders coaching staff clearly is not sold on him 100%. And while we as fans, and like I just said, the guys like me who are wanting to see him get in there and get his shot based on the 4 quarters that we saw him play the last game of the season, the Raiders coaching staff is the opposite. The Raiders coaching staff sees him in practice every single day. They know exactly what they have in Terrell Pryor, a heck of a lot more than any of us, the microphone jockeys, they would certainly know a lot more than what we do. And
no, Murph. I watched him on TV. He was excellent. My opinion's better than Reggie McKenzie's. Shut up.
Well, and no one's going to fire you if the Raiders lose. No one's going to fire me if Terrell Pryor sucks in a game. But Dennis Allen and Reggie McKenzie have a job, and that job will go away if they don't have W's, chalked up when it comes to this year and the next year. So they're going to put the players on the field that are going to give them the best chance to win football games. And if they don't think that Terrell Pryor is that guy, I got to trust them because they're looking at him every single day, and this is what they do for a living.
And that's my big point. I mean, Matt Leinart was the backup, Murph. We got to be real here. Whether we hate, we hate Craig Knapp, whether we think it's his fault, whether DA, whatever, whether they're old school, they don't like the running quarterbacks, whatever, you got to think these guys' football minds are better than ours, who only watch it on TV, and you got to think they're going to put that team in the best position to win, unless you're Bill Callahan. Ayo. But there's a reason Terrell Pryor's not seeing snaps. And I don't think we see it as fans. I think we see his flash and dash, and we ooh and ah and we drool because we are so desperate for something. We're desperate for 8-8. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. And so it's like, sure, on paper it makes sense. You look at Pryor's speed, look at McFadden's speed, you look at Reese. I mean, could you imagine an option? Shotgun pro set, right? You got 2 receivers on the outside. You got a tight end, right? You got Osbury sitting there with Ford and Moore on the outside. You got McFadden on your left, Reese on your right, and Pryor back in shotgun, right? Hike the ball.
There's so many
play action to McFadden, play action to Reese. I mean, oh my gosh, dude, the options will be endless. We think that way, but what do the coaches see day to day at practice? Is it decision making on Pryor's Is it he doesn't know the plays? Is it he can't get the snap off on time? Like, there's so many other things that go into it. And so it's like, as a fan, I don't get that worked up about it. I want to see a winning product. And so I'm going to trust the powers that be to put on that winning product. And until I see them not doing it, then I'll call their heads. But for now, man, it seems like he's making the right moves. I mean, that's all we can say, right? We can see it, but how well do we actually do we know it? And here's the other thing about Pryor that I don't like. He doesn't have zip on his passes.
None.
When I was watching him at Ohio State, the one thing I noticed was he had these lofty balls, these balls that hung in the air too long. When he played against the Chargers, and even that preseason game early on, his balls are lofty. And in the NFL...
We're going to talk about another man's balls.
Let me rephrase that.
Hey, show your fat mouth.
Let me rephrase
You'll talk
that.
about another man's money.
You're talking about his body, how you look at his
lofty
body
balls.
and stuff. Hey, Pryor, his lofty balls. I think it'll be good for the team this year. So, Pryor's throw of an NFL football seems to be too lofty. Is that better?
I agree.
It hangs in the air
agree.
too. It hangs in the air too long. And in the NFL, guys are faster, stronger, and smarter. He'll get picked every day. He'll get
Ed
picked
Reed
every
will
game.
eat those types
Oh
of
my
passes
gosh!
up all day.
And I wonder if that's the thing that's holding him back. Sure, he'd be great at the option. It's a no-brainer, right? Option him and McFadden all day. No-brainer. Maybe he has fumble issues. Maybe he fumbles the ball. But his pass, until that thing gets a little more zip on it, I just don't see him starting. I don't see Reggie McKenzie or Dennis Allen putting their hope and trust in him.
Yeah, and there was even, if I remember right, in that San Diego game, there was one of those lofty balls that got thrown up there, and I believe the DB, it was like it clanked right out of his hands. Like it wasn't, like it should have been a pick, but it wasn't. And I believe we had another one that was picked off as well. So, yeah, you can't do that. You can't throw late over the middle. You can't throw lazy passes like that. And, well, they may not be lazy. He may just not have that kind of arm strength or technique or whatever it is to be able to drive, when you drive the football down the field. When you look at Kaepernick run and throw, I mean, those are missiles, dude, that he's throwing out there. And until we see that out of Terrell Pryor, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's just Twitter's crazy. Sometimes everybody thinks they know.
That's a nice segue.
It's like guys getting these shouting matches and stuff. It's freaking nuts, man. It's freaking nuts. I would love to see Pryor in there, but man, that hit that his ball scares me. His throw scares me, especially deep downfield. Oh, it just hangs in there forever. So it's not good. He needs to go through puberty. It needs to drop. Period. Okay, Murph. There's on ESPN.go.com/blog/NFL Nation. We tweeted it out. We'll tweet it out again. It shows the Oakland Raiders draft options. It's an article written by Bill Williamson, our personal friend, who we've interacted.
Long time.
Yeah, long time, first time. What do the Raiders do for draft? What are they going to do? If we get Flynn, obviously we're not going Geno Smith. Or what if McKenzie throws a curveball and gets Geno Smith, right? I think the Raiders are primarily going to go defense, but they could surprise us. And this article's interesting. Bill Williamson has 2 left tackles on here. Now, I don't know if he's thinking draft the left tackle and play him at right tackle, but don't we got the Incredible Hulk playing left tackle for us now?
Yeah, old Wreck-It Ralph, number 68.
Did you see that picture?
Oh, my gosh. Anybody that's missed that, check it out. It's not hard to find. We actually tweeted it out earlier this week. Jared Valdir has been hitting the weights, no doubt, and he is absolutely rocked in that picture. And he's in that picture that he's standing next to those guys. Those aren't small guys. Those guys are like 6'2", 250, like they're big guys. And Valdir just absolutely looks abnormal. While proportionate, he's just a massive man. So
it looks like it's photoshopped, right?
It does.
It
does.
It looks insane.
He's just a phenomenal athlete on the line, and he can pretty much play anywhere. He can play guard and can play tackle. We hadn't seen him at center, I don't think. We've seen Wisniewski switch in and out of center, but yeah, Valdir is that was just a solid pickup by the Raiders, and yeah, so he can play either side of the line. So I think that by drafting another tackle, it certainly wouldn't be a horrible idea. But what tackle are we going to get up there? And that's what my question is that if Luke Jokel is there, I mean, that's a slam dunk. I mean, this guy's going to be, a long time, not only solid, but he'll be a superstar in as much superstars as offensive linemen can be. He'll be one of those guys. This is going to be, a Joe Thomas type player in the NFL. So I think if Luke Jokel's available, then yeah, you take him. But I think he's not going to be around. I think that if Kansas City doesn't take him, then certainly the Jaguars. Both teams ahead of us are probably going to take him. I don't see Kansas City drafting a quarterback, obviously, with them just acquiring Alex Smith. So most likely that's the direction that they're going to go. So assuming that Jokel's not there at 3, is Eric Fisher worth taking that spot? Now, he's a very big guy. He's very similar to what Valdir was. But when you play at Central Michigan, again, though, like Valdir played at a smaller school, but it's kind of a little more of a wild card. Now, so that said, are you willing to take a risk with that wild card at the number 3 spot, or do you need to draft somebody that is going to be a slam dunk starter for your football team for the next 10 plus years? And I think that's really what you got to do with the number 3 pick if they keep it. And something to keep in mind when we're talking about the Raiders in this year's draft. They don't have a second round pick. And Reggie McKenzie has long gone on record saying that you build teams through the draft, not in free agency. He's going to try to acquire more draft picks. And when you look at the players that he's already drafted, when you look at the adding of a guy like Miles Burris and the productivity that the Raiders got out of him this year, clearly Reggie's a pretty good scouter of talent. And so he's going to be able to find impact players for us in the mid to later rounds of the draft. So if the Raiders can trade out of that 3rd spot and pick up a lower first and a second, or pick up a lower first and another first from next year, or whatever the case may be, that's the move that's going to happen first and foremost. So then we move on to, okay, well, if they don't trade out of it for whatever reason, nobody wants to jump up to 3 and grab Geno Smith. No one wants to jump up there and grab, whoever else. I think that you got to go D-line. I think that, when you lose Bryant, Kelly, and Seymour, all 3. Now, granted, they brought Sims in, so we do have one starting defensive tackle, but that's a position you want to have a little bit of depth at, because those guys aren't necessarily gazelles on the football field. They're not going to be sprinting up and down the field. You got to have depth at tackle, and who better than Sharif Floyd? Lotu Lele is probably was the early favorite, but there's a little bit of a question with his heart condition, and that's been well documented. No need to hash that, but I think that when he kind of dropped down due to that heart condition, everybody took a little bit closer look at Sharif Floyd, and I think he might be the better player. He certainly plays, in the better conference, playing in the SEC week in, week out. This guy's playing against other NFL caliber athletes. Not that Lotulelei didn't see that in Utah, but there certainly wasn't to the level that a guy like Floyd has seen. So I think that's where the pick is going to go if they keep it. It's got to go defense, got to go line. There's some other nice players. I like Bartavius Mingo a lot. If you watch that late game against Alabama that LSU played, man, he was just dominant. Man, he's a good player. But I don't think that you're going to go with him at 3. I think we got to go interior. We got Lamar Houston. He plays pretty good on the outside. Yeah, we're going to need someone else, but I think you got to stick with the interior D-line.
Murph, one guy, I hate to say it, but I will say it for the sake of the Raiders. There's a guy out of Oregon, and I wouldn't sleep on him. His name is Deion Jordan. I watched him play a couple times in person, and ever since he's at Oregon, he's been a standout stud on their D line. He's listed as an outside backer, but he very easily plays a D end. And losing Shaughnessy, this guy could step in and be that guy opposite of Houston on the other side. and he's huge. I mean, he's long. So blocking passes just comes natural to this guy. He could be a top prospect. Bill Williamson very accurately says he could be one of the best players in the defense when he steps on the field. This guy dominated in the Pac-12. People will say the Pac-12 is weak, whatever you want, but good player, man. Football's football, and I wouldn't sleep on him.
The Raiders have been rumored to change to a 3-4 potentially this year with all the linebackers they've added in free agency.
So what if they picked him up and stuff? Could be interesting. There's also that D. Milliner guy out of Alabama, cornerback. Eesh, I'm weary of picking another first round cornerback. If you get a good pass rush, if you get a good pass rush, cornerbacks kind of you can help them out if they're not as good. You know what I'm saying? What's this other guy's name? Go ahead.
I was just saying he's a big, fast guy, and he's certainly the best corner in this draft. There are some question marks with him, but when you look at, again, the mid to later round guys, there is a lot of talent at the cornerback position of guys that are projected to go in the second, third, fourth round. I think that's where the Raiders are going to end up going. I think they're going to address a couple of guys in free agency. I mean, Terrence Newman's gone. He signed with the Bengals. But we still got Tracy Porter out there, and the rumors are pretty heavy about Porter. So I think that we're looking at bringing him in. And then it wouldn't surprise me to see them draft a couple of younger fellas to play corner, in the later rounds. And again, we still have, a couple of guys under contract. Now, some other younger guys that haven't proven themselves. Plus, you got Tywan Jones, who switched over to that position. So I could see the Raiders taking their DBs as value picks, which is where, again, I expect Reggie to add more picks in this year's draft and then load up for those secondary positions in the later rounds. And then to further even your point, you can draft the guys that aren't necessarily going to be or projected to be slam dunk players in the NFL in the secondary, but draft your linemen that are going to generate that pass rush and enable those secondary players that maybe aren't, quote, shut down to begin with or whatever, allow them chances to have opportunity to make plays on footballs because you got quarterbacks that are rushing throws because the D's in their face.
You can make them better than they are with a good pass rush, Murph, what do you think the trade for Cobb, or Klobb, whatever you say his stupid name, and what do you think about the money that he got? Does that affect the Raiders at all? I seen earlier somebody tweeted that out. What does that trade? What's the significance for the Raiders? I know they were talking about going after him, and I'm pleased that they're not. What is that? Is that any significance? As far as he got this money, so therefore this guy better get this money, or because he's traded away, Raiders don't have many options left, and so Seattle holds all the cards if they want Flynn, or does that have any bearing on what the Raiders do at quarterback?
Well, I'm going to have to ask you. I've been out of pocket for most of the day. I knew that the Raiders were looking at him as a possible second option. Should it not work out with Flynn, what was the trade and how much what did he get?
Maybe it wasn't a trade. I think he was just he was
just a signing.
My bad. Yeah. He's getting a 2-year deal for $13 million.
From who?
Buffalo, which is funny because didn't they just give Fitzpatrick? You talk about quarterback problems, huh?
Yeah, they just let him go. So Cobb is Kevin Cobb had some success in Philly and was kind of a quarterback that was on the rise, and then he went to Arizona last year and. Man, they were just terrible, right? I mean, they were brutal. I mean, they started off 4-0 and then fell off a cliff, and they were constantly changing quarterbacks in and out. And was it system? Was it lack of talent? Was it who knows? But I can tell you this: he's certainly not going to find any more talent in Buffalo than he did in Arizona, especially when you got an all-world receiver in Arizona like Larry Fitzgerald, and then. Stevie Johnson's a nice player up there, but I think that's it sounds to me like an overpayment for a guy like Kevin Cobb who's still unproven. And that's again the nature of the NFL. And we talked a little bit about it before when we were talking about what Flynn got. That's about the money for a mid-level guy, is you're going to pay him $6 million a year. And, that's what it's going to be. And you're going to pay 12 a year for a bigger name guy. You're going to pay $12 million for an elite quarterback. You're going to pay half that for the middle of the road guys. And then you're going to have chumps like, Matt Leinart that are going to make a couple mil. So, I think that's pretty much in line. I think that it doesn't help. I heard that what the Raiders were trying to get Flynn to maybe restructure a little bit when he came in. It certainly is not going to help with the Carson Palmer situation. I think that is, again, and not to rehash that subject all over again, but that certainly stamps that as being, a done deal that Carson's gone. Does that, incent Flynn to hold a little tighter position? Probably. And, frankly, he's not going to command that much more money than what he's already, he's not going to command much more of a cut or a restructuring than what he's already at. So I think any movement there is going to be essentially a lateral move. So I think if that's truly the guy that the Raiders want, they'll be willing to move a little bit, regardless of the kind of money that Kevin Kolb got.
We're going to spend approximately 3 seconds on this topic. I would like Flynn because he's 6 years younger than Palmer. Moving forward, what are the expectations, Murph, of everything you've seen so far? What do you think the Raiders do next year? What do you think is an honest, unbiased, diehard fan opinion about how many games they'll win? 6, 7, 3, 2? Is who we pick up in the draft and a couple more free agent pickups really going to matter that much more? What do you think the Raiders are sitting at next year?
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the health. A lot of it's going to depend on the health of Darren McFadden. I mean, clearly we see that there is a major difference in this team when he is fully healthy and when he is not. He was on pace to have an MVP type season in 2011 before he went down with that Lisfranc injury that took him out. Then they put him in a garbage offense last year, and again, injuries took him out. If that man can play a full 16 games in a power run scheme, I think that, and also depending on, I don't even think we need to have an all-world quarterback in there. I think we need to have a quarterback that's serviceable. Nothing wrong with what J.C. Campbell was doing in that Raider offense, taking advantage of big-time targets like McFadden in the passing game, like Marcel Reese you mentioned earlier. I think Osbury is going to be a guy if they don't draft another tight end. There's going to be a lot of options for this offense. I think there's going to be a lot of chances for them to score points. If they can put up a halfway decent defense, I think that this team could win more than 4 games. I don't know if we're going to get any further than 8-8. But when you look at their schedule this year, just to kind of go over it, you got Pittsburgh at home. They're probably going to lose that game. Titans at home, they can win that one. Jaguars at home, they can win that one. Redskins is a loss. Philadelphia is probably a loss. Denver's probably a loss. Then you got Kansas City and San Diego. So that's 4 wins at home. Your away games, you got the Colts. That's probably a loss. The Jets, I think they can beat. Houston's a loss. The Giants are a loss. Cowboys are probably a loss. Denver, maybe we get to Denver. I don't know. We'll give them that one. That's 6 wins. And then KC and San Diego to finish out. Say we split that. So that puts us at 7 wins. So I think the best case scenario for this football team is that they're going to go 8-8 for next year. And, I think that's if that's what it takes in a dead money year like we're in now, to going into then the 2014 season with plenty of money and plenty of draft picks, I think that this team is going to be in great shape. So to short answer your question, I'm gonna split the 4 and the 8, so I'm gonna say 6 wins. Say Raiders go 6-10 in 2013.
So then here's the next question, the follow-up question. When do we judge RM? When do we judge DA? When do we as fans have an accurate interpretation of what their leadership is going to do for this team? Obviously, we do not want to go in the path of the last 10 years. Coach comes in, after a year he's gone. Coach comes in, after 2 years he's gone. I mean, it takes years to build a squad. I don't care how great of a coach you are and how great of players you have. Chemistry, man. The Heat didn't win it all the first year. They won it the second year. It's chemistry. It has to be chemistry. When do we as fans have the right to say, hey, Reggie, it's not working, bro. Hey, Dennis Allen, It's not working, man. Is it week 10 of this year? Is it after 2013? Is it after free agency of 2014 when we have a whole lot of money? Is it after 2014? Is it after 2015 when we actually have all of our draft picks? When is an accurate time where we as Raiders fans can say, hey, it's time to move on, or hey, great job, you've done really well?
I think that you got to look at it as in a 5-year window. And I think it would be unfair to both those guys, to Reggie McKenzie especially, maybe a little less Dennis Allen. But I think you got to give him time to build it. That, are there stories of quick turnarounds in the NFL? Yeah, we see it every year. And who knows? The Raiders could be one of those teams this year. But for the most part, those quick turnarounds, we saw Tampa Bay do it a few years ago. We saw the Redskins do it last year. There are cases of that. There are cases of, a guy like Russell Wilson coming in completely unexpected and dominating in the National Football League. Kurt Warner's another example of that. A guy that completely turned around a franchise in 1 year. A team that went from, perennially sucking to an MVP season and a Super Bowl victory against the Titans. So, there are cases of that, but they're very, very few and far between. And for the most part, I think that owners in today's NFL get a little too trigger happy, and they don't allow plans either A, to work, or if a guy does have success early on and then starts to fall off. Now, we don't know what's going on in-house. We don't know what the conversations are between the front office and the coaching staff. There could, who knows what those guys are actually talking about, what the attitudes are. And there could be a lot of reasons that lead to coaches' dismissals. But as far as on-the-field performance goes, when you look at teams that have success and then lose that success and kind of have a 3-4 year run of bad football teams, and then those guys get let go, well, is that really the coach? Is it really Ken Wisenhunt? Did Ken Wisenhunt all of a sudden wake up one morning and suck? Did Mike Shanahan wake up one morning and just suck? These guys don't forget how to coach. And so I think you got to give them a time for the plan to work. Now, there are two different ways, though, to look at it. You can look at the plan like the zone block scheme. Well, no one was willing to wait around for that plan to work because it would take a complete overhaul of the personnel and offense to get that thing to work, including your superstar running back, the most high-profile player you have on the team. So that wasn't going to happen. So that was a dumb way to look at it and waiting. Let's wait and see how this works out and how this to give this time to evolve. But when it comes to personnel, when it comes to the building of a franchise that's at a disadvantage to begin with, I think that's where you got to have a little more patience. I think that Mark Davis has come out and said that he was going to give him plenty of time. The speculation was that 5 years. I think that he got a little bit, uncomfortable late last year, and he did make some mentions about maybe making some changes. A lot of people speculated that was Dennis Allen, but clearly it was Greg Knapp. And so I don't think that Mark Davis is the kind of guy like his father was. He's going to haul off and fire somebody. I think that he's going to let these guys stay in there. He's going to let them work his plan. So the judging the personnel, to answer your question, 5 years on McKenzie, maybe a little less on Dennis Allen. And I think that he really hurt himself when he let Knapp do what he did with the offense and not override that. Now, that could be because DA is a defensive guy. It could be because he was a first-year head coach. He was still filling out his authority within the franchise. Who knows what it could be? But that will be his downfall, is that his selection of coaching staff will end up determining how long of a career he has with the Oakland Raiders. Because as much as we like to celebrate guys like Belichick, guys like Tony Dungy, guys like Mike Tomlin, guys that have had good levels of success in the National Football League, at the end of the day, when it comes to coaching, it's really your coordinators. The head coaches are kind of overseers. Some of them have a hand in the play calling and things like that, but really, it's all about the staff. It's how good of a staff are you going to assemble? And if right now, Dennis Allen has assembled a staff better this year than he has last year, adding guys like Tony Sperano. So I think he's on the right track. I don't anticipate him being gone anytime soon. And I just hope that the Raiders as an organization continue to have patience with both he and Reggie McKenzie. I'm all in with these guys. I think they're doing great, and I look forward to seeing what they're going to bring to us as Oakland Raider fans.
There's a great article. We tweeted it out a couple times tonight on Bleacher Report. It says this, and this sums it up about 3/4 of the way down the article. The title is "Not Just Rebuilding a Roster." While McKenzie was dealing with salary cap issues, he was also overseeing one of the largest franchise makeovers in the history of the NFL. I mean, if you think about it, this is spot on. He was also overseeing one of the largest franchise makeovers in the history of the NFL. Al Davis ran a nickel and dime franchise for about 50 years. It worked until the start of the salary cap era, when the NFL started to become a big business and franchises started to run like Fortune 500 companies. This is one of the biggest overhauls in all of sports. I mean, it's what's bigger? What organization has been overhauled like what we're seeing right now with the Raiders? Who has ran and been in charge of an organization longer than Al Davis? Right? I mean, it's nobody. Nobody even comes close. Maybe up there in the Yankees and stuff, but it was up there. But, Davis was in control for 50 years. And now McKenzie's coming in, and here we are to say, not even a year later, McKenzie, no. This guy needs time. At least 2-3 years, man. I mean, really, after 50 years, we're not even going to give him 5 or something like that, Well,
there's a tons of stories that come out of the Alameda offices about the culture change that happened within that building. Guys like John Herrera getting let go. These guys there, Oakland was an absolute, lockdown of information when it came to everything. I mean, everything was denied. Everything was a secret. Everything was kept. When you listen to the guys like
keep it in the family, Omerta.
Yeah, when you listen to guys like Vic Tafer, who we're going to interview next week, and we've had in the past on our show, beat writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. When you listen to Vic talk about being in Alameda and being at the Raiders facilities, it's like a completely. He said last time we talked to him was right after McKenzie and Allen got hired. And he talked about how just the different attitudes were at practice, and about how, the culture change has really started to take root. And so I'm going to look forward to hearing from Vic next week when we talk about him. Now we're, 6 months away from that process. And I'm curious to hear how much even further along they are, because you're right. It was a total different, overhaul of not just the salary cap, not just the personnel, but the entire organization. And, you mentioned nickel and diming and Al running it on a quote budget. He pays superstars, $100 million contracts. But there's a really funny story that I always remember about Sean Payton when before he got hired on as the Saints head coach, he had interviewed with Al. And there's a pretty funny story out of that when he went to interview Al, it got to be, pretty late in the day. They had interviewed off and on all day long, and it got to be about 11 o'clock at night. And and Al asked him if he was hungry. And so Sean said, yeah. And so, typically these guys are used to getting kind of wined and dined a little bit. I mean, this is he eventually turned out to be a Super Bowl winning head coach, one of the better coaches in the league. This is a guy that at the time was a huge prospect coming out of Dallas. This was going to be a high profile hire for the Oakland Raiders. Al famously ordered McDonald's cheeseburgers and KFC coleslaw for them to eat there in the office.
All right, Murph, we could spend forever talking about the Raiders. We got to take a quick commercial pee break, and we'll be right back to discuss the whopping historical fact of the week. And Murph, to lead us into that segment, is going to be maybe the second greatest masterpiece ever written musically. You're listening to the Sports Degos.
yo, Vinny, what's the name of Daddy's radio show?
The Sports Degos, yo.
What's your cousin's name?
Yo, Sonny.
Yo, Sonny. And what's Daddy's name?
Yo, Murph.
Yo, Murph. How old are you?
6.
6. And you know that the greatest team in the history of sports is who?
The Raiders.
And who stinks?
The Broncos.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Sports Degos. TheSportsDegos.com, at TheSportsDegos on Twitter. Listen to us live at Spreaker.com. Search for The Sports Degos. Murph, every week we do a whopping historical fact of the week. Usually we try to tie it into the day of our show. We try to find something important in the history of Italian and Sicilians as to why we should talk about it on this day. So, Murph, what you sent me today, I'm wondering how you're going to pull it off. I'm wondering, because usually it's pretty obvious. We know by the name. We know by, he was a sports guy. But I'm stumped. So, take it away, Murph. Whopping historical fact of the week.
The whopping historical fact this week is that on this day, March 30th, the Beatles photographed one of the, if not the, most famous album cover in history. And that album cover, I'm talking about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Very famous. Probably the epitome of Beatles records. One of a masterpiece when it comes to rock and roll. So why is this? An English, former English boy band starting off their psychedelic years. One of the greatest bands of all time. How in the world are these tea drinkers representing this week's whopping historical fact? Well, there's a couple reasons. Today, March 30th, I could only find one Dego that was born, and that was me. There wasn't any Degos.
And you're a half Dego.
And I'm a half Dego. Eric Clapton was born on this day. Celine Dion was born. I know, Celine Dion, right? That's my claim to fame. Celine Dion was born on this day. Ian Ziering from 90210 was born on this day. There's a lot of people that were born on March 30th, but none of them are Italian. So then I always look for historic events. I look for something, hopefully sports related. That's first and foremost, something with the DiMaggio, that's the kind of stuff that we look for, Gino Marchetti or a Capuletti. We look for stuff like that. There was nothing, man. The well was dry. There was nothing directly related to Italians for today's whopping historical fact. But in my research, I kept coming across the fact that the cover photo for the Beatles was taken on this day. And I stopped for a second and I thought, you know what? When you look at the cover, there is a list of about 50, 60, I think it's there's 61 people in that picture. There is the Beatles in real life, and then they're standing there with a bunch of cutouts and wax figures of people from different areas of history, different influences that were on them as a whole. So I'm like, all right, maybe there's some Italians in there. So I started looking through all 61 people. And, there isn't a lot of Italians that jump out at you. There's guys like Edgar Allan Poe. There's Fred Astaire, Bob Dylan, Tony Curtis. I thought, oh, Tony Curtis. He's dark complected. He's got dark hair. He sounds, maybe his real name was Curtino or something, and he just changed it. Nah, he was Greek. Marilyn Monroe's in there, William Burroughs, Shirley Temple, Lewis Carroll. Lots of famous people. And then I came across one name, and one face, Marlon Brando, the Godfather himself, the man that played Vito Corleone in the movie that defined Francis Ford Coppola's career, the epitome of an Italian-American gang flick, the title which you just played, Marlon freaking Brando. And guess what? He's not Italian. He's German, Dutch, English, and Irish. And so now I'm like,
you're killing me.
I'm like, what the heck is going on? What am I going to do now? So I kept going through the list. And I did find 2 Italians and 1 reference to another Italian. So the first Italian that we come up with is Simon Rodia, a very little-known architect and not a performance artist, but a sculpturer, and he created the Watts Towers in Los Angeles, which was a favorite of the Beatles, a favorite art exhibit. So, okay, so that was nice. That was nice. He was Italian, but with the Watts Towers, I never heard of that. I'm going to assume that the tens of listeners that we have listening to the show right now don't know what the Watts Towers are either, but you can Google it and you can see it, and it's kind of cool and abstract or whatever. It's Beatles. But we came across a slam dunk, though. Back in the 50s and 60s when doo-wop was a big deal, and that really fits for our doo-wopping historical fact of the week.
Doo-wop.
Doo-wop. There was this guy, right? His name was Dion DiMucci. All right? And Dion DiMucci was a famous Italian, famous pop singer for Runaround Sue and The Wanderer, which was those early doo-wop tunes were big-time influences on the Beatles and their career. So Dion DiMucci being on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club band that was taken today on March 30th. That is our whopping historical fact. And the kicker to all this, there's a boxer, the Big Bear, the man who in 1962 won the heavyweight title by knocking out Floyd Patterson. That man's name was Sonny Liston. I believe that's who you're named after.
Murph.
That's your fighter, wasn't it?
Let's not try to go there. That was by far the biggest piffle effort I have ever heard in my life. And when I say piffle, I mean you take something out of nothing. That was phenomenal. That was like a paper you write for your master's thesis or whatever and stuff, and you just basically have one idea and you expand upon it and make something out of nothing. I'm still not quite sure your whopping historical fact even makes sense, but since you went on about it for so long and were confident in your delivery, I'll believe you. Good job.
This is the moment where, like in Billy Madison, where they say, "Thank you for that, Mr. Madison. We are now a lot dumber."
Yeah. We're a whole lot dumber than when we first started. Murph.
Marlon Brando's not Italian. That's what I take from this. That's what really screwed me up. Stupid Brando.
He wasn't even the main part of that movie and stuff. You know.
No, I know. It was all James Caan and obviously Pacino.
James Caan's not even Italian.
He's not Italian either. But at least his name was Sonny.
That's true. It's true. It's a good name. We were going to talk all about the Patriots and Bill Belichick, and gosh, we got to bump him, Murph. I'm sorry. Moving forward. Murph, I want to talk about the sad sack of the week real quick. In your eyes, Murph, what kind of behavior is deserving of a sad sack? Like, how do we... Primarily, you pick the sad sacks of the week because you're more familiar with that sad sack mentality than I am.
Yeah, we smell it.
How do you determine who's a sad sack?
Well, a sad sack is defined simply as a mope, a whiner, a complainer, anybody that takes umbrage with something that doesn't directly involve them and chooses to use their high-profile position to voice their opinion, not totally unlike our shut your fat mouth, but there's a little more of a whiny to it. Donovan McNabb wasn't whining about Tony Romo. He was just criticizing, and he was judging Tony Romo. So that's why he gets your shut your fat mouth. The guys that are sad sacks, the guy of our week, those are the guys that are like, oh, man, the whiners, and there's a lot of whiners in basketball. When you look at just the way that these guys react to hard fouls and the way that they flop and cry and, Paul Pierce, looked like he blew his knee out and then 6 seconds later he's jumping around and running back on the court.
He's carried back in. Carried out the court. Carried out the court. Yeah.
So that's, so there's a lot of sad sacking going on in the NBA. And this guy that gets this week's sad sack of the week, he's probably been not probably. He has been a sad sack for the better part of 30 years. I'm talking about Dan.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Danny Ainge. When you look back at the Celtics teams of the 80s, he was a whiner back then, and he's a whiner now. Obviously, now he's with the front office of the Boston Celtics. And what makes him this week's sad sack was that he was talking about in reference to the Miami Heat's game against the Chicago Bulls. Now, look, we are not defenders of the Miami Heat. That we are well documented in our feelings on the way that they were assembled and kind of the way that the attitude they bring to the court. But at the end of the day, though, they're very successful now, especially in what they're doing. And when you have high-profile players and when you have stars, when you have Michael Jordan, when you have Tom Brady, when you have these guys, they get calls, okay? Joe Montana was notorious for anybody just taps him, pushes him down, you're going to get a flag. Tom Brady's like that nowadays, and the whole NFL is switching to be like that a lot. But these superstar players, they try to protect them, and superstars get calls. Kobe gets calls. Like, that's just the nature of it, And so Danny Ainge was being critical of LeBron James saying that he should have got certain calls based on some of the play that was going on in Chicago. And when you look at some of the videos that are up there, Carlos Boozer gives him a pretty rough shot. These were basically non-basketball calls. They were not necessarily the flagrants, but the aggressive calls, the aggressive play towards LeBron James. He was kind of calling out the refs a little bit, saying that they kept their whistles in their pockets and maybe there should have been a few more calls. I don't think that's out of line. I don't think that's out of line at all. I think that's really in line with what a lot of star athletes do. So, all that said, Danny Ainge says that LeBron's protests were, quote, almost embarrassing. Like, and I saw that and I thought, well, what? Embarrassing how? Because the guy is trying to draw attention to the fact that there's maybe some calls that should have been called that weren't in an attempt to, in the next game, get them called. I don't think LeBron was whining. I don't think he was being a sad sack. I think he was just drawing attention to it, not unlike a guy like Kobe would have done. So I think that Danny Ainge, you get our sad sack of the week, but the best part of the story, though, was Pat Riley's response. And Pat Riley responded and said, you want to tell us? Do you have that response?
Go ahead. I'm just saying, you don't hear this every day from an owner of a ball club.
There is no doubt that Pat Riley was the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers in the 80s and had plenty of earfuls of Danny Ainge and saw him being his sad sack on the court back then because he just came right out and said, Danny Ainge needs to shut the F up and coach his own team. That was awesome. You don't hear that. You don't hear another.
You never hear that.
Shut the F up? I mean,
never.
And then he says he was the biggest whiner going when he was playing, and I know that because I coached against him. That was awesome. That was just awesome.
I'm not a Lakers fan, but growing up, I loved how he did his hair, Murph. I loved Riley's hair. Slicked back, freaking greasier than, whatever. And it was just him and stuff, He's had the same hairstyle his whole life. And for him to come out and drop the freaking F-bomb he's the owner of the club. I mean, are you kidding me? That's the most badass thing I've heard in a long time from an owner of a club. Think about Mr. Kraft and the Patriots who abstained from commenting on the tuck rule, right? Most of the time, these owners, these political fancy pants freaking, I don't want to say this, I'll say this, I'll go with the flow. Riley comes out and says, yo, Ainge, shut the F up. Love that, dude. Love that. He's like, don't freaking talk about my player. As much as I hate LeBron, I love the fact that Riley went to bat for his guy, man. You can't hate that. That's freaking badass. I'm done. Anyway.
Maybe we should come up with a badass of the week, too. That might be a fun segment because definitely Pat Riley would win badass of the week this week.
I think he would. I think undoubtedly he would for sure. Undoubtedly.
Now, when you tell somebody publicly to shut the F up, that's awesome.
Telling you, right? It's freaking awesome.
Don't you love to know what the history is between those guys? Because there's gonna, to come off with something like that, there was some chatting going on between those guys back in the day. That is, you don't tell somebody to shut the F up unless you got some history. You know what I mean? Like, that's sweet, man. I would love to know what's going on between those two.
Yeah, there's been some hidden behind things. Because look what Ainge said. Didn't he say, what did he say on Twitter? And keep in mind, Murph, this is what's funny about this. We never grow up, right? We just get older bodies and older versions of ourselves, and we're better at, most of the time, we're better at interacting, But Riley says, shut the F up, Ainge, right? So what does Ainge do? He comes back. I don't want to mess up his Armani suits and all that hair goop. It would be way too expensive for me. It's like, really?
Lame comeback. It's like, how does it, you don't want to mess up his Armani suit? How?
Dude,
by what? By shutting up? Like, what?
What are you going to do?
Stupid.
What are you going to do, Ainge? Oh, my gosh. Ridiculous. These are grown
well said,
men.
Sticks and stones may break my bones.
Millionaires.
Dumb.
Oh, my gosh. They're millionaires on Twitter going back and forth. That's why we love Twitter so much, man. It's freaking amazing, Murph. Freaking amazing. All right, Murph. Monday. No. Yes. You know what happens on Monday?
This Monday.
This Monday.
Is April 1st. April Fools.
You know what happens on April Fools?
No.
Day. This year.
No.
Baseball, Murph.
Oh, is it opening day on April Fools?
Opening day. I believe. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure.
It's got to be getting close.
Yeah. So it's actually.
I believe you.
Tomorrow. Is it tomorrow?
We'll call it the weekend. We'll say this weekend baseball opens.
No, it's Monday, April 1st.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. You're right.
Although one of these sites, that's old school.
Well, usually ESPN will have a big game. Like, they'll have one or two games that go on like an opening night before the official opening day. Like, they'll do a Sunday game. So maybe the official opening day is Monday, but maybe they'll do a game or two on Sunday, especially if the tournament's tournament's going on tomorrow. So maybe not. Maybe it will be Monday, because I know they don't like to typically compete with other sporting events like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Monday. I think I've heard it's.
Boy, we're a
it's
couple
Monday.
of in the know sports talk radio hosts.
Yeah, we know our stuff, don't we?
We know our stuff.
We know how to clean up crap in ourselves. But regarding baseball opening day, yeah, go somewhere else, right?
I can't type it into Google fast enough.
No. It's Monday.
Okay, cool.
We should talk baseball next week. A's a little bit.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. I got my Sports Illustrated baseball preview in the mail this last week and had a lot of fun looking through that, kind of reading about what the outlook was for our A's. Deadspin looks at the A's as being just over 500 team, but last year they finished 94-68, man, and had an not necessarily unprecedented, but just an absolutely exciting run last year in that last series against the Texas Rangers to win the division, and played Detroit Tigers tough, but Verlander at the end was just too much for the A's to handle. But they're a year older and they got some pop in the lineup, man. That this is the first time in a while to where the A's are going to be hitting bombs out there, and so yeah, I definitely want to get into the A's, and let's talk a little bit about the West as a whole, and the stupid overpriced Angels and. What the Mariners are going to do. Are they going to be anything other than just Felix Hernandez again? There's a lot of fun stories there to get into. So let's definitely do that. And also next week, let's talk some Warriors. That's shame on us, man. We have really overlooked, for as much basketball as we've talked about, we've really overlooked our Golden State Warriors. And, there's only, 9 games left in the regular season. And so by the time we get into next week, the Warriors are currently sitting in the 6th playoff spot. That'll be a good time next week to really dive in and talk a little bit about our Golden State Warriors and what we think they're going to do in the playoffs this year.
Well, Murph, while I was a fan of Sharunas Marshallonis and Chris Mullen and Tim Hardaway back in the day, you may remember Tim Hardaway from his famous crossover dubbed the UTEP two-step. Murph, I'm a Blazers fan now, man. I live up here in Blazer country. Been up here for 17 years, man.
No wonder we haven't talked about it.
I
All
like
right,
the Blazers.
well, let's talk about
we can talk. And in fact, tonight, the Warriors
playing each other, right?
absolutely crushed the Blazers, Murph. Destroyed
really?
them. Wasn't even close. I think it was about like 25 points or something like that. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was bad. Anyway, yeah, next week we'll dive into the A's, look at how their opening week was, look at the kind of their division, and also, Murph, I want to do that with the NFL as well. I love the Raiders, but I also want to know what's going on with their enemies. I think it was who's that guy who wrote The Art of War? Whatever his name is. Sun Tzu. Yeah, you have to know your enemy. Right, Rage Against the Machine said, know your enemies. So I want to look at what the Broncos are doing, what the Chiefs are doing, what the Chargers are doing. I want to know.
We're serious about this too. We're not going to blow them off like we usually do.
Oh no! We've been blowing them off for 12 weeks. But this time, I actually want to kind of know what's going on. Now, definitely not go in depth, but maybe try to get some beat writers from Denver and Kansas City and San Diego on the show and have some good banter back and forth and stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, and that'll be a great topic to go over with Vic Tafer as well. We talked with Vic. We did an AFC West outlook with him when we talked to him just prior to the season this last year. And, man, just what an excellent resource for not just the Raiders, but the AFC West and the NFL as a whole. So, yeah, I think that'd be a great time to do it.
It'd be good. All right, Murph, appreciate you joining us. Appreciate the dedication you would take to the Degos, that you would crap yourself in order to make your appearance on the show. That nothing says more dedication than a 40-year-old who craps himself hurrying to come to the show. Oh, and I believe you're going to go play a video game after this, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to go finish off playing BioShock Infinite. I got to see what happens. I don't want to give away any story details, but I got to go see what happens, what the ultimate fate of Miss Elizabeth is. Hey, but real quick, too, before we get out of here, something I just want to throw out there. We'll throw up the link on Twitter so you guys can check it out. If you guys don't know who Anthony Adams is, check him out. Hit him up. Look for him on YouTube. He's got a channel on there. You can just Google search or YouTube search Anthony Adams, Anthony Spice Adams. He retired officially this week. Again, if you don't know who he is, he's one of the funniest guys, former now NFL athlete. Hilarious videos. My favorite is stuff NFL free agents say. Watch that video. You'll laugh your butt off. It's very, very good, very funny. He's going to be missed in the NFL. I hope he continues on as an analyst somewhere or something on TV, because this guy's definitely worth it. Very funny guy. So congrats on his retirement, 9-year career in the NFL. Anthony Spice Adams.
All right, Murph. Appreciate you joining us. Thanks to everybody who checked us out. For all of our archives, we'll have the show notes on the website here shortly. Check us out on Twitter at TheSportsDegos. The website's called TheSportsDegos.com. And all of our shows can be found on Spreaker.com. It has a app for your phone.
We have an app.
And the archives can also be found on the website as well. Until next Saturday night, Murph, just like Pinky in the Brain, take over the world.
We're taking over.